awesome. Well, we appreciate you being here, Doc. This is absolutely amazing. Before we dive into it, let me tell every single one of y'all just how amazing our guest, Dr. Brandon Jones, is, the magnifying glass author himself.
Oh, man.
The shoulders upon which we stand. I know he's shorter than me. Y'all don't worry about that. This that bromance. This my brother.
I love it.
Dr. Reverend Brandon Jones. How we doing, sir?
Brother, I'm doing well. How you doing today, man?
Oh, I'm blessed. I'm blessed. I know we got a lot of stuff to dive into. We're gonna be appropriate with our conversation. Obviously,
of course.
We got some providential things that are just gonna fly.
Let's do it.
But I want to start off by you just first telling our listenership, we building it. Tell them about your journey to where you are today at UT and B. Jones Speaks and all of that good stuff.
Sure. So for everybody that doesn't know me, my name is Brandon Jones. I am from the great city of Tyler, Texas. We're known for barbecue, roses, and Earl Campbell. So, we play a little bit of good football out there.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Let's see. I was born and raised there. I was a multi-household kid. So my parents divorced when I was 7. So I bounced around a little bit before ultimately I lived with my mother for a while. Then I lived with my dad. But because my dad worked nights and my mom lived in Dallas, I would stay with my grandparents, or I would stay with my aunt and uncle because my big brother, aka my cousin Jonathan, stayed there. So I was there all the time. So because of that, he was into sports. So I got into sports. I graduated from John Tyler. I played football there. I did a little track the first 2 years of high school, and then just stopped because I wasn't really a fan of track. Although I should have stuck with it. I wasn't really a big fan of running, and still not a fan of running. But I love football. Always had a passion for football. Loved it. But played under Hall of Fame coach Alan Wilson. And if you know anything about Alan Wilson does not throw the football. You're going to run it.
At all.
You're going to be in a wing tee. And as a result, given my size and lack of size and physique to play any position of note in a wing tee formation, I'd get put out there at what we were calling, the S position or the T or the W. They just throw me out there wherever they could put me at towards the end of a game. But, I looking back, if I could do it all again with football, honestly, I would have quit after junior year when we went to state. I would have just quit and asked. Yeah, I would have just asked her, hey, can I do an analytics kind of thing? Because I love sports. Like, I really did. And I learned so many lessons, and all my friends were on the team. And honestly, I was an AB student. I was in the AP classes, IB program, all of that stuff. So, I'd always known how to be a student athlete, which is why I think that's why coaches put up with me being on the teams, because I could help keep guys eligible. And so I look back and I'm like, I think I was just tolerated. I made a good scout team body and I helped people stay eligible. And so, but looking back, if I could change anything, I probably would have stopped after junior year and focused more on trying to do something different for college. But it kept me in shape. It kept me out of trouble, gave me incredible discipline, and I've got lifelong friendships as a result of that. And then my coach played at Abilene Christian. So Alan Wilson played at Abilene Christian, and I wanted to walk on there. And he, I don't know if he put in a call or not, but they did let me walk on. But about 3 days into my college career, as everybody knows, that was the end of that. I saw guys that, had been balling the previous year in high school, and they got full ride scholarships. And I didn't know anything about red shirt, and I didn't know anything about, pulling your weight at the college level. The game was just so fast. And I'm like, do I want to commit to 5 years of this? Because I know I'm going to get red shirted. And I'm like, I don't want to get beat up again for another 5 years. And my father at that time was potentially facing a layoff. So I had a decision to make. And I just said, you know what? I went to Gary Gaines, who the Friday Night Lights coach. He was coach at ACU at that time. And I went to him and said, look, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for taking a chance on me. But honestly, I'm going to have to focus on being a student right now, because that's the one hustle I knew I could work. That's the one angle I knew that if I could be resourceful enough to navigate the institution, I would do that. So I tell people I'm never the smartest person in the room, but I'm probably the most resourceful. I'm not a genius, but I'm really, really, really resourceful. And so I found my way through Abilene Christian, got my bachelor's in graphic design, and then I got my master's in higher education with the student affairs emphasis. And I always knew I wanted to do research and work with Black men because I saw how we were matriculating our institutions, and some of us were dropping out, and some of our institutions just were not successfully retaining us. And so when I pursued a PhD, I always wanted to go to UT for grad school, but I didn't get in for the PhD. I grew up a lifelong Longhorn fan. And so, you know, I was like, I got to get there somehow. So after I got in the University of Texas at Arlington. So in the system, right? But then I met my wife, Melissa, there in July of 2009, and
life changing.
It was the game changer for real, because I applied to 6 PhD programs and got into one. And so, you know, I tell people, it's like, look, God knew what he was doing, because if UT had a called, I was going to UT. Like, everybody else could have accepted me, but if UT said yes, I was going to Austin no matter what. I didn't even want to go to UTA, but they made the biggest pitch to me because somebody said, you should go visit the school. So I went and fell in love with the program. Dr. Jim Hardy took me to lunch and just said, look, I think that with your skill set and given the things that you're interested in, we could really use a student like you in our program. And so, you know, I was sold. The minute that I finished lunch with Dr. Hardy, I shook his hand and I'm like, all right, I'm in, man. And, you know, 6.5 or so years later, I finished my doctorate. But it was in the middle of that process where I knew automatically that my research interest was going to be on student athletes, because I've had a passion for sports since the day I was born, just didn't have the ability to match the passion. However, there were things I could see, there were things I could observe, because again, I spent a lot of time on the bench and on the sideline, and I knew what energized guys. And so if you talk to anybody that ever played, that I played with, they would tell you, oh yeah, he's an energizer. He's somebody that I'm going to be cheering loudly. I know my role. And so that's where that village concept that we'll talk about, that's where I got there from. Like, I knew my role. I knew I wasn't going to ever be a starter at the varsity level. I knew I was never going to be a household name. You're not going to find tape on me or anything like that. But the one thing that I can definitely lay claim to fame on is, you see, if I'm in the room, I'm hyping everybody up, because it's not going to be about me. It's about the team. It's about the group effort. And that's why I feel like I'm the best group partner you can have. And so I finished UT Arlington in 2015. But while at UTA, my wife and I got married. Our daughter was born, Alissa, in 2013, in January of 2013. In May of 2013, I took a job at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, working in their Student Success Center. And it was also there where I got a chance to really start working with Division I athletes. I was at the University of Dallas up in Irving prior to going to Tennessee, and I loved it. I worked with the basketball team and the volleyball team a lot, because I was in charge of working with students on probation or students experiencing academic difficulty. And I just fell in love with working with athletes. And so every job I've had, we just find each other. It's not because it's my actual job. It's just, there's just this gravitation, right? And so I took that job at UT in Knoxville, and I started meeting with the folks over in athletics. And during their recruitment visits, I'd see different players and families coming in, and they'd see me over in the facility. The person in charge of academic services, Dr. Joe Scoggin, he was very instrumental in, helping me out, giving me advice, talking to me about finishing the PhD, and definitely learning how to navigate athletic world, because I wasn't in N4A or anything like that, and I never had a formal position within an athletic department. And so Joe would always give me advice and let me come in and just be around his staff and the team. And then it was like my third year at Tennessee, Butch Jones and the football team had a program called, it was an honorary coach program. And I got a chance to be on the sideline at a game, got a game ball after, you got to sit in a quarterback's meeting. And that's where I had already met Josh Dobbs before that when I first got there. But that's where I got to know him a little bit better. And just sitting in a quarterback room at the college level was game changing. And, you know, I never did buy into the notion of the dumb jock anyway. And by that time, I had already written extensively in my dissertation about how untrue that really was. And so that was a game-changing experience for me. And then I went to Clemson. My son was born, my son Brandon was born in 2016. And a couple of weeks after he was born, we were on our way to Clemson. And that was the year, that year Clemson won the national championship against Alabama. That followed there. They won it in January of 17. They won the national title. I stayed there, and my wife and I the job was okay, but my family wasn't adjusting to South Carolina. From a professional standpoint, my wife wasn't vibing. She wasn't really connecting with anybody outside of work. We had a pretty good church home, had a good family, very good connection with our pastor and his family, but my wife was just unable to connect and find a peer group of women her age, specifically Black women for sure. And my kids weren't adjusting, and it was just an all-around difficult scenario. And my wife knew, and everybody who knew me knew that I always wanted to be back at Texas. I always wanted to be at UT Austin. And so around July of 2017, my current job as the Associate Director for Student Learning and Development in Housing and Dining here at UT, that position posted. And I had applied for it when they first posted it the previous year, and I didn't get it. And my friend, my good friend, Dr. Aaron Voiles, got the job, but he got promoted less than a year later. So that same job that I didn't get opened back up. And, you know, and I prayed, and I was like, look, for me to get this job, a whole lot of stuff is going to have to work in my favor. And shout out to my boss, Dr. Mylan Kirksey, who, you know, selected me and chose me, and everything I needed, I got to get there. And so less than a month after we interviewed, we were here in the Austin area, back in our home state. My wife is from West Texas, up near Amarillo. She's a graduate of UT Arlington. And that's also where we met when I got my doctorate. So that's the journey. Long-winded way of saying we've been a little everywhere. Every time we have a child, we move. Hence why we ain't having no more kids. You know, like literally within less than 6 months of having a child, we moving. So I'm like, you know what? I ain't done with that. I just don't. No, we're done.
So you got a car seat with the baby boy. You get a car seat and a U-Haul reservation.
Man, listen, that literally, my son was born on March 14th. Literally May, first the second week of May.
Gone.
I was on my way to Clemson.
That is absolutely awesome.
On the way, man.
Oh, wow. But that's all right. But you, I know you mentioned just briefly a couple folks along the way, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into your mentors, right?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
we, you know, and obviously we're going to talk about the village in a minute, but I know that in terms of a village, it has to be constructed, and sometimes we get to choose who's in that village. Sometimes we don't. So if you'll dive a little bit deeper into some of your mentors and how your village was constructed.
Yeah, man. I mean, for me, it first and foremost, it's always been my father and grandfather. Growing up in East Texas, my grandfather lived 10 minutes away from where we lived. And so I was never outside of an hour shot of being near my grandfather until I went to college. And so my grandfather was the architect, you know. He taught my father and uncle everything they know about what it means to be real men, what it means to be fathers, what it means to be present. My grandfather wasn't a man of a ton of words, and neither was my dad. And so, but presence always mattered. And so my first mentor would have to be my father, obviously. But, you know, and I love my mother very much, but everybody knows I'm daddy's boy. that's my hero. That's my go-to. He was the prototype. He was everything I wanted to be. My father passed in 2014. My grandfather just passed this past March.
Right.
And so, just having the very strong men in my life with zero tolerance for mess, that was very instrumental in me becoming the man that I am. I made a couple more mistakes than they did because my dad would always joke about how he's like, look, it's hard being William Jones's son. And because my grandfather's name was William Jones, my great-grandfather's name was William Jones, my dad's name was William Jones. My name is Brandon William Jones because my mother's name is Brenda. And then my son's name is Brandon William Jones. So my dad was like, I decided to switch it up because he said it's so hard living in the same city and walking the same streets that your father walked. And carrying that name. And so he said, I'm good with you forming your own legacy. And so that's why being Brandon William is just fine. And, but my earliest mentor is definitely my father and grandfather. They're the first two. And then there's a host of other people after that. But my father and grandfather set the standard. Absolutely.
Shout out. Rest easy, brothers Jones. We appreciate you. We that's important. And I know you and I talked about this briefly. I'm the third in the line of William Goodlows, and so I certainly have a fondness and appreciation for that. And my father died. How old am I? Have mercy. 32 years ago.
Man, wow.
And he and I have the same name and the same birthday. So I certainly understand how that works, right? And so I appreciate you saying that because that's huge. That is absolutely huge. And your father having the foresight to say, you need to go forge your own legacy in terms of being you and your lineage. And I think that's amazing. And obviously in the context of the Ancestor Architects podcast, that's huge, man. That decision itself, right?
Yeah. And I think, and let me add something to that. So, my dad played football at Emmett Scott High School. Was the only, at that time when he was coming up, was the only black high school in Tyler. And so, and my dad played running back. My dad was a big man. And, make no mistake about it, my father was not a little man. And then I come along and I'm just this thin, little frail thing. And my father never pushed athletics. He never pushed. Because him and my grandfather saw early on, growing up in East Texas, there's not a lot of jobs for black men, especially, I didn't grow up seeing people with Ph.D s. I didn't grow up seeing people become doctors and lawyers, at least not black men. Right. And so for me, I think early on, my father and grandfather knew that he ain't cut out for blue collar life because they put me out there on that lawnmower and I knew what to do, but that stuff bored me. I don't want to cut grass for what? I could be reading this book right now, dude. Why you in such a hurry to get back in the house? I'm like, one, it's 105. Two, I played outside all the time. And so when I finally did want to be in the house, I'm like, I just want to chill and read. Right. And so my grandmother and my aunts nurtured the intellectual side, but my father and grandfather were like, you know what? I can hear a carburetor breaking down a mile away. I know what a bad transmission sounds like. I know how to change oil. I know how to change tires. I just don't because that just wasn't my gifting, right? So they knew early, look, let's just invest in the part of him that's already that's good. So my dad never ever said he would make it very clear. You don't have to be me, man. You don't have to do what I do. I do not want you trying to be me. So I'd walk around in his Letterman jacket. I'd run around in his jerseys and stuff. And he'd be like, dude, that's cool, but don't be disappointed if you can't play running back. And Lord knows I couldn't. And he was like, don't be disappointed if, you don't start on the varsity. Never started on varsity. He was like, don't be disappointed. He said, because Brandon, it is what it is. Just focus on what you are good at. And school, my dad stopped being able to help me with schoolwork after the 5th grade. So once I stepped into AP and IB classes, he was just like, he'd look at my books and stuff and go, dude, you need to do what you need to do. So if I had to get to school early and go to tutoring, I went. But about age 13 or 14, him and my mother had done such a good job co-parenting and pushing me to greater heights that I didn't want their presence at the school. I'm like, I got this. Because I'm like, if you need to sign something, it's a field trip or it's money needing to be spent. But make no mistake, I'm not going to be a discipline problem. You don't have to worry about that. I'm not going to be a behavioral issue. You don't have to worry about that. So I don't need you up here. And my dad hated it, but because my dad worked nights, and again, I stayed at multiple households, it gave him a sense of comfort knowing that he could come home, he could leave for work at 10 o'clock, come home the next morning. We literally be passing each other when I was driving.
Oh, wow.
My dad would be coming home from work as I'm driving to school. We would drive past each other some mornings. He'd be like, "Hey man, good to see you. I'll see you after practice."
Right.
But that's how that was the life we lived, man. But it was absolutely a village effort to make this work. And the Brandon Jones story is a story of what it looks like to have a village around you and people who know their roles within it. I'm a compilation of all those people who were like, we see what you're good at. Let's just continue pushing that. So yeah.
Right. That's amazing. And that resonates so deeply with me, and I know it resonates deeply with others. And so I want you, this isn't about me. This is about this story. This is about you. I want you to talk to folks about the village. I know you do extensive work on that. I know that you are a huge part of our village. We're Behind the Whistle, my wife and I, and we are grateful and humbled by that. But talk about the village, Doc. Go, let me shut up. Talk about the village.
Yeah, man. So the village it's an intentional group that that each of us is intentional about selecting to be a part of our inner circle, right? So you've heard that statement, it takes a village to raise a child, and I absolutely believe that. I opened up the acknowledgments portion of my dissertation talking about that village is so important. Now, if it takes a village to raise a child, what's needed to develop and nurture a student athlete? Amen. A village. What's needed to have a coach with a healthy balance of work and life? It's going to be a village. And so if we're intentional about that with our kids, why don't we continue that into adulthood? Because parents, you're a parent, you know this, we're very selective about the folks we allow around our kids for good reason. We're very selective about the doctors we choose, the churches we attend if we choose to go to church, the neighborhoods we choose to live in. Everything about our experience as humans, there's a selection process that goes into that. But somewhere along the lines, we stop being selective about that and then wonder why we're getting a lot of the results that we're getting. We're wondering why we got some of the neighborhoods that we've gotten. And I think that what happens is that we stop being intentional about what we allow into the village. Now, I'm not saying that we need to ban people from neighborhoods or we need to, because that obviously is going to disproportionately affect certain groups, specifically Black and brown people. So that I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that when you're thinking about Will Goodlow, when I'm thinking about Brandon Jones, and I think about the goals that I have in my life, this isn't taking advantage of people, but there's some experiences that I need that I can't get on my own. And so again, you heard me talk about being the most resourceful. I knew I wasn't going to be a D1 recruit. I knew I wasn't going to get scouted. So very early on, when I was on scout team, our linebackers coach, Lonnie Hagan, shout out to Coach Hagan, he and I would literally be sitting over there in between plays while the starting offense was over there getting the huddle together. In between plays, we'd be doing math problems together.
Oh, wow.
So worked in the math department. So he would be quizzing me in between plays. He'd be asking me history questions. He'd ask me about the fall of Rome. And this man went and flew helicopters in Vietnam and all this stuff. And he's a white coach at a predominantly Black high school, but he saw something in me. And, he knew athletics wasn't going to be the thing either. But I look back and I'm like, man, this dude was getting me ready for life. So Coach Hagan was a part of my village. Alan Wilson was definitely a part of that village. But, we had a lot of guys go D1, my junior and senior year. So he had other folks. He had other people that had his attention. I wasn't one of them. And so I had to make my way differently. So the village is something that I think everybody needs to make sure that they're paying attention to. I talk about coaches. It's like, hey, who are the villagers that your players go to. You know, I joked about at the first behind the whistle. I joked about how Dabo Swinney didn't know me. Dabo Swinney didn't know I existed, but his players did. And the role that I typically have found myself playing, and it's not one that I just go walking into, but players and athletes of multiple sports, they would come find me. They'd be in my office, and I'm like, y'all got somebody for this. They were like, yeah, but I don't know if they really for me, you know? And so I'm like, okay, cool. Let's talk about what that means. And so the role that I often found myself playing with student athletes was just one of advocate and one of just somebody that's just, I'm going to listen and I'm going to let you be your real authentic self. And unless you're trying to hurt somebody, which, you know, that may have come up a couple of times, unless you're trying to hurt somebody, I'm not going to go snitching to your coach. Now, I did also joke about the fact that there was a particular coach at an institution I won't name that I'm like, I was the reason why that dude didn't go fight his coach. I'm like, let's talk about that. I'm like, let's talk about what's really going on. And that's why I'm a big proponent of, hey, during two-a-days, can we take some time? Like, we're going to get to the practice and we're going to get to the heat. We're going to get to the drills. But can we take 1 or 2 days where coaches are going around and just checking in? And it's like, hey, Goodlow, you know, last year Goodlow was in his mindset was pretty good, but his dad passed away. Is anybody checking on that? Like when these players report back in the middle of June, you know, now that the NCAA has released that, it's a lot of killing of unarmed black men and black people that has happened over the course of this time that sports hasn't been occurring. Is anybody checking in on these players? I've been checking in via Twitter and Instagram and texting the ones that I do have cell phone numbers for. And I'm like, are y'all good? How you doing, man? And to be honest, not okay. A lot of them aren't okay. So the question is, as a coach, if I know that this is occurring and I know that that's not my gifting to have that conversation, why aren't social workers a part of the athletic experience? For, you know, women who are experiencing all kinds of issues, and this isn't just black women. This is women, especially women in sports, especially volleyball. Why are we not before we get to the court? Why are we not sitting down doing an evaluation and seeing where their mental state is? Because if I've done a holistic review and assessment of all my players, then I know, okay, here are the gaps that we have right now, and I need to staff according to those gaps or do trainings according to that. Some people would call that gimmicky. And I'm like, okay, you could call it a gimmick, but if at the end of that season, regardless of what's in the wins and loss column, if somebody who should have been on medication their whole life ends up on medication, are they not a better member of society now because they can function like they need to? You know, why is it, you know, if we're checking in, why are we not sitting down and having some real talks? It's like, hey, out of 100 players on my team, 67 of them said this is affecting, this crisis in our country is affecting them. Why didn't we bring in an Emmett Gill? Or why didn't we bring in, you know, a counseling psychologist to, you know, like, hey, 2 or 3 hours a week, I don't want to know about it unless they try to hurt themselves as a coach. So, but this is what they need. Let me let them know, y'all, they are not going to report to me. I got it in writing right here. Unless you're going to hurt yourself or somebody else, I'm not going to know about it unless I need to. But the door is open and building trust and relationships. And so that's the concept of the village. The village is all about being intentional about being your best self. At the end of the day, that's really what the village is. It's about being intentional about helping our folks be their best selves. And when I look at my team, when I look at my staff, when I look at myself, I look around and I go, man, you know what? I'm really weak in this area. What resource can I take advantage of or utilize to get better in this area, to get better, not just as an athlete, but as a person? Because the sport will end one day. Who's helping me plan for that day? You know, who's helping me think about that? And some players realize, you know what? I'm a part of an athletic department that just unfortunately is either unequipped or unwilling to help me do that. And so that's why I love about what you all are doing with Behind the Whistle and at the Black Student Athlete Summit at UT is because now we get to sit down and intentionally have these conversations. I can sit down and go, hey, look, you graduating this year. What's your plan if you don't go to the NFL? of the 5 participants that I studied writing my dissertation, only one is actually 2 are actually still in the NFL. And it was the 2 that had alternative plans. They were the 2 that were like, yeah, you know what? I'll be okay if I don't go to the NFL. I'll be okay. And I'm like, here y'all are having successful careers. And I mean, they're not starters in their respective positions, but they're part of 2 very dynamic organizations in the NFL right now. But the one who said, I don't know what I'll do if I don't play football, got hurt his first year.
Oh, wow.
Failed what would have been was going to be a first round draft pick, but probably stuck around too long, honestly. But the truth of the matter was he had great grades, but the thing that he said was, man, I couldn't do what you do. I couldn't sit behind a desk. And that's fair.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But now I don't know what he's doing. Like he was Mr. Popular. He had a very active social media, didn't get in the NFL, and got hurt year 1 and never recovered. And I don't know what he's doing right now. But the ones that were like, I don't care if I go to the NFL, they're in the NFL and they're doing just fine because they got things to fall back on: medical school and business.
Right.
They both were like, yo, look, I got out. And they had villagers. They had very intentional people around them. So and that makes all the sense in the world to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know that it's interesting that you mentioned that. Is like I think it's not a coincidence that the folks that were not planning on solely becoming professional athletes were the ones that persevered, while those are, obviously, well, I'm going to the league, this is what I'm gonna do, and then it happens or it doesn't happen, and now what? Like you get to that, now what? You had the people like, well, I'm good if it doesn't,
right?
So I think that's interesting, and even as you mentioned earlier, in the construction of a village, and I was thinking about that, obviously in the athlete or student athlete development component, but even deeper in that on the coaching side or even like athletic administration, right? Because yes, it's an intentional practice. So like, how do you see that as it, like in your role as the associate director for student learning and development?
Yeah, so I give praises to people like Brian Carrington, even Coach Herman, and a lot of the Jordan Fields, and a lot of folks over there at UT that are a part of the recruitment. And I give them praises because I look at how intentional they are about the people that they bring in during the recruitment process. Right. I can't say a whole lot, but what I can say is I like the fact that they bring in non-football people to talk to parents and families about the UT experience. Right. And so what I've seen there is, at least as far as Brian and Jordan and everybody on the recruitment side with football, what I've seen them do is they're very intentional about showing them like, hey, if you come here, these are going to be members of your village. Okay. Dr. Jones is over in housing, but he also has a background in working with student athletes. And also he's from East Texas, so I can speak the lingo. I can tell him about food, and I can also tell him like, look, some of the guys that we recruit may come from my area of the state, or may come from my high school in certain instances.
Shout out to Beast, Texas.
Oh yeah, yes sir. Shout Beast, Texas, yes sir. But the thing that I've seen that we do at UT very well is that we're very intentional about that. I've had the privilege of being able to go to practices. I've had the privilege of, I got parents that after I meet them during recruitment, they're like, hey, can you peek in on my son? I'm like, they got coaches for that. I was like, they gonna find me. I was just like, no, they'll find me. They're like, are you sure? I'm like, ma'am, they always do. And my office is literally in a glass case. Like I cannot hide from students.
In the fishbowl.
It literally is. Like when you walk past my office, I have one solid wall and three big ceiling to floor windows, because I want it to be there. I want to be visible and I want to be present. And so I think that what I've seen at UT that we do a really good job of is we introduce we introduce players in every sport to the folks that are going to be a part of their respective village.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one area that, not just because football does this very well, I think that I was telling Haley the other day that, you know, I'd like to do more of that with volleyball. I'd like
right.
I'm trying to be more present with all of our student athletes, not just in football. Football is my favorite sport, but you know, I want to. Hey, look, if you on the rowing team, if you swimming, I don't care what you're doing. You need people, you need resources, you need to be connected. And I look at myself as a resource. Look, I'm the plug. Look, if you want to know how to get your grades up in math, let me connect you with these people over here. Oh snap, you looking into we had a recruit, his mom said that he wants to do his own fashion. And I was like, as big as he is, I was like, I know you struggling to clothe this boy. I said, but check this out. I said, Michael Strahan got his own clothing line.
Yep.
And I'm like, Dr. Moore, shout out to Dr. Moore, our vice president for diversity and community engagement. Yes, they take a group of people to the NFL headquarters every year, to Wall Street, to the NBA, to Rock Nation in New York every year. And I'm like, it wouldn't be hard to add Strahan Company to that list. And I said, it's affordable clothing. You can get it at JCPenney. Like, this is a Strahan polo right here.
Got some pants in the closet. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's affordable. And I said, I'm not saying that we could promise him an internship, but I said, I know the folks here at UT would show your son how to reach out and make that contact so that he can go learn the business from somebody that plays his position and that played his position at every level and succeeded and is a Super Bowl champion. Why wouldn't you want to set him up with that? And she was just so appreciative of that. And I'm like, that would be fun. So I think we have to be intentional about just saying, like, look, what kind of experience do you want when you want to go to college? What kind of experience do you want with, what kind of life do you want to live after your sport or after you graduate? Oh, is graduation even your goal? You know, I give Clemson credit because I used to oversee the Tiger Promise program, not oversee the whole program, but I was one of the academic advisors in the Tiger Promise. And so what I did was I helped student athletes that when they finished with their respective sport as a professional, if they wanted to come back and finish their degree, Clemson paid for it. And so I was responsible for helping folks get their schedules so that they could graduate. And Clemson, I applaud Clemson for the effort there to make sure that funds and resources were available in that regard, because it's like, look, you gave a lot to this institution. You still rep this institution as a professional. Here's our way of saying thank you. And so being a villager in that role was fun because I met a lot of cool people. But, you know, I never came at it as a fan, but I always came at it as a person that's like, look, I support you, you know, hey, let's talk about something beyond your sport here. Let's talk about your life. So it's very important to be intentional. And I like what we're doing at UT in showing like, hey, here's who will be a part of this for you.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And that's absolutely critical. I know as a high school coach, and what we talk to, you know, some of the athletes that we work with that are able to be recruited or even interested in that process or wherever it may be, because it obviously not everybody's going to get to play at Clemson or UT. We're just going to be honest with, or even at Abilene Christian. It doesn't, you know, the level doesn't matter. But what matters in the long run is obviously being intentional about who you surround yourself with. Yes. And that's not something that is necessarily taught well enough at the secondary level, in my opinion, because I don't know that people understand that that's what's supposed to happen, especially for folks who are not athletics centric people. Right.
I agree.
Right. Because, you know, I think, and I don't know this for certain, and this is an assumption, so please correct me if I'm wrong. The student experience is different than from the student athlete experience. Those are, of course, it is completely different lenses.
It is.
You know, and so if you
two different worlds.
If you don't mind talking about those two worlds, just
Yeah, and again, like I said, I wasn't a starter in my respective sport, but I still went to practice.
Right.
I still had to be there when those guys were there. I still had to go to film. I still had to go to weights. And I was an AP and IB student, so I still had, and I had a harder academic schedule, even though I wasn't a starter in any sport. So let me make that clear, because even being a starter, especially at the college level, it is different.
Different
It's
life.
different.
Yeah.
You know, so at the secondary level, though, I think that the reason why we don't focus on that is because the stakes are different in that you got high stakes testing, and then depending on the state that you live in, you know, certain sports take a precedent. You know, we're in Texas, so football is a religion.
No doubt.
Friday nights, and again, I'm from East Texas, so Friday night you shutting down. Ain't nobody going to work, not until 10 o'clock. Between 7 and 10, when them lights are fired up and on, man, listen, you're not gonna find too many people not listening to the game on the radio or not at Earl Campbell Stadium or Trinity Mother Francis Stadium there in Tyler. Like it's just not gonna happen.
Right.
And so when we talk about, you know, being intentional about who we're surrounding these kids with, I think Alan Wilson did a good job of that. I will say that I look at the players that were on that 94 team that went undefeated, won an ESPY, went to state. I think that those guys were our heroes. You know, growing up as a kid, everybody wanted to go to John Tyler because of those guys. And you see them at church, you see them at the store, and you saw the work ethic. You saw, like, man, those guys were kings. And when they come back to Tyler now, they're still treated like that. And it's been, that was 1994. And it's almost, they may as well have played that game last week because they were celebrities. And that's a level of prestige we never had experienced. But when I look at the people that Coach Wilson surrounded us with, you know, Morris Anderson was quarterback on that 94 team. Morris was out there doing drills with us at practice. Morris was in the locker room with us in, you know, during our playoff run in 2000, in late 2000. You know, Darwin Brown was on that team. Ended up playing football at Texas Tech. He was there in the locker room. And then, of course, you got guys like David Warren that played at Florida State, that was just a freaking supernatural, just athlete of a man, you know. You see him walking around and it's like, oh man, like a hush would fall over the room. But also we bring in preachers every once in a while, you know. He played gospel music during, you know, during workouts at times. He would, you know, that happened. That would happen because I mean he was also the athletic director, so you know, that was one thing about, you know, not having to teach a class. He could also play whatever music he wanted to play in there.
Logical place for the athletic director, people.
Yes, sir. So he so Coach would often bring people in to kind of talk to us before practices or before something major, but also he was very selective about folks that couldn't be there. So for example, that helicopter parenting and showing up at practices, we ain't allow that. That wasn't allowed. There were parents that weren't allowed to come to practices. Now, thank God my father was not one of those people, but there's one specific parent whose son played for, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. His son played for Coach Wilson, you know, in the early years, but his youngest son came along and he was just out there being critical and all. He got banned from practices.
Really?
Oh yeah. And it wasn't uncommon to have police at practices sometimes, because, you know, things happen. It's East Texas, and it's there's gates. But if you knew where to go to at around 3:45 or 4 o'clock, you could walk up on any of our practices whenever you wanted to. But I think that there was enough respect from the community that that kind of died down, but it wasn't uncommon for the dads in the community to show up after work or on their way to work a shift at Train, or Kelly Springfield or Carrier, because those were the jobs. That wasn't uncommon for them to stop by to see their boys practicing and talk and reminisce on the good old days. As a coach, you got to be selective about that, and you should absolutely be thinking about, you know what, who can I bring in to motivate my guys? Who can I bring in to, I'm having trouble reaching Goodlow. Who can I bring in to help me connect with him differently? Because there's something going on with my connection with him, and I'm not getting through to him. You know, I don't recall anybody from the Positive Coaching Alliance showing up at any of our practices, but knowing what I know about mental health now and knowing what I know about trying to get the most out of people, I think that might have benefited a couple of players through the years. That might have benefited, some of the coaches in their development and saying, why do we have to subscribe to this break you down mentality to build you back up? Me and Tim Crowder were talking about that because he's from Tyler. That's my cousin. He's from Tyler, played football at UT as well. And we were on Twitter talking about this the other day. Like, why in the world do we have to? Why do I have to break you down to build you up? Like that's not how life is gonna work. Why can't I meet you where you are and see how you respond to things and go, okay, I'm not saying that a coach can't raise their voice. I'm not saying that a coach can't get upset. But what I am saying is, why can't you do like Tony Dungy and use that quiet strength? And like Dungy would say, my guys knew I was mad. I never had to communicate that I was angry. They knew I was angry. Right. And I didn't have to say it. If they were underperforming, the standard I set showed them that they're underperforming. And so I never had to yell. I never had to get in anybody's face like that because that's not the kind of man I am. And so I think that, as a coach, like, why wouldn't you want to be developed like that? That's what the Village does. It's like, hey, you want people in your corner that are going to check you and go, yeah, but did you have to do it that way? Right. What if he responded differently? Just like about the coach on scout team helping me do math problems. This man is a Vietnam vet and could snap just like that. But he knew how to connect with me. He connected with me intellectually. So if I was going to make a play on scout team, I'm like, I'll go hard for this man because he found a way to connect with me. And, had I been bigger and had I had a little bit more speed, I would have absolutely loved to play linebacker for him. But we were deep at the LB spot, so that wasn't going to happen. But the truth
the linebackers in East Texas.
Man, listen, we had Fletcher Session, who ended up playing at Texas Tech. We had Paget McGee, ended up playing at Oklahoma State. Man, listen, there wasn't nobody going to play linebacker. He wasn't going to get in the game for what? That's all them boys did was live and breathe football. So
right. That's beautiful, man. No, I think you're right. And if you don't mind talking about that a little bit further with the coaching development side.
Sure.
Because I know, obviously, personal experience, professional experience, that doesn't happen very. Let me not say that. Let me say this correctly. Coaching development takes place.
Of course.
Now, does it take place to the extent that you just spoke of, or having the wherewithal to meet you where you are, or does it just end with the model that's been in place for a long time, that militaristic model? And I'm not saying that the folks that came up in that system who didn't know better at the time are wrong. That's not what we're doing. We're not casting.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. Because obviously in certain contexts, that breakdown the build up model, that's all you knew and that's what you coached, right?
Right.
So that's what you coached. But now it's kind of like that adage, when you know better, you do better. So if you don't mind talking about how one might go about constructing a village to ensure the development of coaches.
Yeah, man. Now, and I appreciate you asking that. I think the first step is taking an assessment. Like, look around you, take an assessment and see who is around me. Who's helping me spiritually in those areas that are of utmost importance to me.
Right.
Who is helping me spiritually? If that's an area of importance. When it comes to mental health, am I going to therapy? Do I even believe in the power of therapy? Right. And there's research out there that shows that coaches, and I talked about this at the first Behind the Whistle, coaches can play the biggest role in the prevention of sexual violence that's perpetuated by men. Because who do you spend the most time with as an athlete? Your coach. Who are you around all the time? And so if I'm somebody that you look up to and you see all the time, and I'm like, hey, y'all, I got to wrap practice up because I got a therapy session. Hold up. Therapy? Coach going to therapy? Right. Hold up. What's wrong with coach? Well, you find out ain't nothing wrong with coach. Coach do that to stay in check. See, that's a game changer, especially coming from where a lot of us are coming from, and sport is all we've ever known. But that level of, as Brene Brown says, that level of vulnerability, right? That right there is what's usually missing. So if we're talking about that first step, take an assessment of what's around and who and what is around you, and where are the gaps? What's missing? Okay. And so when you find what's missing, how are you gonna fix that? Are you gonna staff that? Are you gonna get some volunteers to help with that?
Right.
Are you gonna structure your week in such a way? Coaches write everything down. They got note cards and tablets and
Everywhere.
all this stuff. You got the whole day, every minute scripted. Why can't we devote 30 minutes, an hour a week to where I'm looking back and I'm going, hey, position coaches, we did an evaluation when the guys came back and reported in, besides taking their weight and measurements to see if they got fat or something like that. Let's go deeper here. Let's do a quick evaluation. Let's get a quick assessment of where they are mentally. Some of our guys are testing off the charts for depression.
Right.
So before we go to putting the helmet on, I'm gonna need a couple of y'all to go, like, look, and I'm gonna give you your list. And I'm like, look, I need you to check in with these guys. And don't just go in there and blow smoke. Like, literally just check in. Hey man, how you doing? And leave room for them to be honest and say how they're really doing. Because if on a quick evaluation, you got people testing off the charts for depression and you about to go line them up in 105-degree heat, that's a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely.
That's a recipe for the transfer portal, at least on the college level. At the high school level, we ain't thinking about that because the stakes are higher for coaches. It's win or get out in certain states.
True.
So you got to take that assessment. You got to see where you are, and then you got to adjust accordingly. Once you've identified those gaps, make that adjustment. Y'all, the reason why we fell apart in the fourth quarter, now that I've had a chance to look back at this, the reason why we would fall apart toward the end of volleyball games, or the reason why we would pull up at the end of races as in track, is because something's going on up here. And I got to find a way to reach you here so that I can reach you here. Once I can reach you in these places, you'll run through a brick wall for me, but I wouldn't ask you to run through a brick wall. But you know, but if I said, hey, don't pull up so fast at the end, run through. But if that ain't registering, let me ask, what do you know about track? Come to find out, some of these kids don't know the fundamentals.
Run fast, turn left.
Thank you. Run and keep going, right? So until you find out, like, hey, in basketball, I noticed your shooting motion is off. Talk to me about your experience with basketball, because you got African kids who are coming over and they first time touching the ball is week 3 of the semester, right? So take an assessment, identify the gaps, and then make the adjustment. And once you've done that, then you start looking at, all right, do it again. What's still missing? What are the results that we're getting as a result of having these folks around? But it starts with me as the individual. As the coach, it starts with me. So at practice, you're gonna see my pastor every once in a while. Just that. We ain't necessarily leading prayer or nothing like that. You just that. Because that's my village. That's what I need to stay in.
That's for me.
Yeah. And then every once in a while, I'm gonna have a psychologist that I trust that's there. My therapist might show up. And my coaching staff may take note and go, hey, you know, I've been noticing coach is real different now, man. Meetings have been running more smoother. You mind if I hit your therapist up? Well, of course. That's why I got him there. The social worker. Some of my guys aren't eating. Some of my, like, and I got them out here running till they throw up. Wait a minute. Some of them aren't eating. Some of our girls on our volleyball team, and I'm not saying that this is what's happening here or anything like that, but hypothetically, some of our girls are, and this is real too, though. In some places, some of our girls are struggling with, you know, anorexia and bulimia and other disorders, and just being a woman, especially being a Black woman right now. Who's checking in on those things? And so maybe if we built in some time before competition or during the week, hey, Thursday's practice is going to look a little different. Or we're going to start the week off. The beginning of the week should probably be the mental health focus. Because if I can start the week there, come game time on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, or whenever you compete, I'm in a different space because I've had a chance to process the game from the other day. I've had a chance to process life. I've had a chance to exist in the student world as well as the athlete world. And so just continuing to make those tweaks and those adjustments. And again, I know that numerically, because I know that there's probably a coach that's going to listen to this and is probably thinking, I don't have time for that. Okay. Who does? who's got the time? Because there are villagers that don't mean your players well.
Right. Exactly.
We see the NCAA reports every year. We hear all kinds of things about what happens to students when they go home. There are villagers that don't mean our players well. So somebody got to check in. Now, again, I know that with 100 players or with 50 people and you just being one person, maybe that's when we get some volunteers. Maybe we need to get Fellowship of Christian Athletes there on campus one day. Maybe we need to just, talk to the district about contracting out a couple of times a semester where on the same day, same time, all the athletes get to talk to a therapist, just to talk.
Right.
And the things we'll find out, oh my gosh, could change everything. Like if I got a profile, this is what I love about how some college coaches are doing. I love how you got a profile on your player. Take the time to get a profile so that I know, like, oh, wait a minute. I got in his face the other day. He's on medication for schizophrenia. Ooh, that wasn't the move, And I yelled at him. But his daddy used to yell at him or yell at his mama, and here I am replicating what he's seeing at home for the sake of competition. And let me rethink that. I bet I can get that same level of energy out of him without resorting to that. And again, I get in the moment things happen. I'm not naive. I'm not foolish. But at the same time, I'm wondering if people know that there's a different and a better way. And I think that when you look at who's around you, it's like, man, I bring this dude in every year, but the players don't seem to respond to this dude anymore like they used to.
Still
maybe I ought to bring
in
somebody else. Yeah, maybe I ought to bring somebody else in. Maybe I ought to try something different. Or maybe one size won't fit all. What might work for the quarterbacks won't work with the defensive line.
True.
I had to, because I wasn't a starter, when I got brought up to the varsity from JV, I had the privilege of floating between different position groups on game day. And so I would be over there with the D linemen all the time. And I'm like,
it's a different world.
Coach, and shout out to Coach Giddens. Coach would he'd just be sitting over there talking to him like they grown men. These 16, 17-year-old kids. He just talking to him. And then when it come time to do the business, he got the best work out of him.
Right.
I'd go over to the linebackers group with Coach Hagan and listen to him as long as he let me. And I'm like, okay, I see. So this is how he gets it out of them. Militaristic, but at the same time, he treats them like he knows that, and he responds to them like he knows they need to be responded to.
Right.
He'll give you the look if you miss a call, and that'd be the end of that because you know what's coming next. Over to the DBs group. You already know what's going to happen over there because that's the other position group that I was supposed to be a part of. So it just really depends, man. It takes, this is why it takes a village. You already have a village as a coach. You got position coaches. That's a village right there. Who's helping my QB coach? Who's helping my offensive coordinator? Like, because when he leave practice, he be on one sometimes, like, coaches have lives outside of this thing.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that's always overlooked. I remember when I was coaching way back when, I used to want to wear a T-shirt. I used to threaten I was going to get one made, say on the back, say, that's not my kid. That's your kid. Because sometimes I think, and it's always easy. We talk about nobody's going to worry about your money like you know, or your baby like you. And I think sometimes people forget that there are still those are human beings behind those whistles, right? And so I think absolutely, it's absolutely critical to understand and appreciate the fact that we need to find ways to help nurture and develop their growth because that doesn't stop. And I think you said that earlier.
Yeah,
it doesn't. We got to do that. And
we
to not do it is crazy.
Right. And that's why I like when you're talking about the Ancestor architects, we do this work here in my role at UT, where I have a program that helps students who want to increase in their cultural competence. And so cultural competence being their ability to communicate effectively across difference, no matter who's standing in front of them, can they adapt their behavior, like change it in the slightest bit, or however much they need to adapt it to be able to communicate to the person that's talking to them. One of our goals in housing and dining is that our students, we got 3 learning goals: that students become better self-managers, that they engage in community, and that they develop their cultural competency. And so as a result of that, one of the things that I tell people when they move in is I'm trying to help create the type of person I want teaching my kids at school. Right. I'm trying to create the type of neighbor that I want in my neighborhood. I'm trying to create the type of doctor that when they walk into my room, they know how to treat me as Brandon Jones and not just a name on a chart. I'm trying to create police officers who know how to de-escalate instead of reacting. Right. You know, those are the kind of things those are the kind of villagers I'm trying to create. And so as a coach or as a teacher or in my role, because I'm also a professor as well, in all those hats that I wear, I'm trying to create people that I want out in the world having a meaningful impact in those ways. Right. And so because I know that that's my role in the village, I don't care if you're a student athlete or if you're a faculty member or if you're the principal, the janitor. My job is to make sure that whatever encounter, be it positive or not so positive, I want to make sure that you walk away feeling heard, validated, and if we run into each other again, there's a longing to let's dig deeper now. Right. Because I want to create a setting and an environment where we helping each other grow. And that's not going to always be this charming, pleasant experience. Sometimes because conflict is good. We think tension is bad, but that's what working out is tension. Right. Tension and conflict can be good. And cultural competency helps with that. True. And so I'm all about just making sure that we're creating we're helping to create the type of citizens we want in the world. Right. And at the high school level is so important. Yeah. Like you're working. I mean, at every grade level, you're working on a finite amount of time. But at high school, you got one shot. This is it. You know, when they come in as 9th graders, they shouldn't be the same developmentally and mentally when they walk across the stage in 12th grade. Right. There should be some intentional experience where when they leave, they understand the world that they're going into and they know how to start finding their fit and their way in it because you've given them the tools and the resources necessary. But if high stakes testing and winning at all costs is all we've taught them, we're setting them up for struggling unnecessarily in college. Right. So, or the workforce or the military.
Yeah, and certainly a struggle that is mostly insurmountable. Right. And unnecessary.
It is.
Right. It's just unnecessary. I mean, because, you know, I don't think anybody in Minnesota is worried about their state test scores right now.
No.
You know what I mean? Like that. Not. And I understand out there's certain standards in life that we need to beat. I'm not talking about that, but I mean, the premise is still the same. It is. In the grand scheme of life, we need to know that you can function and have the cultural competence or the empathy or the emotional intelligence to be able to interact and exchange ideas and understand that. And there's going to be times when that you're going to need that bee to sting something because you still need that honey.
Right.
You know.
Right. Come on now.
And so, and now let's shift a little bit because we got to talk about the good Reverend Doctor.
Come on now.
We got to talk about some of the work you're doing in the church because, hey, churches build great ancestors too. Schools, they do. Churches, absolutely. You know, I think it's ironic that the courthouse, the schoolhouse, and the church house have the same setup. But you know, I'm sorry. I know those things supposed to be separate. I'm just.
You preaching to the choir, brother. Listen, I don't think it's ironic. I think it's intentional.
Right. I think it's crazy. You know, those meeting rooms look just the amphitheater. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the work you're doing with the church and some of the stuff that's going on with that.
Sure. So for those that don't know, I am a active preacher. I attend Greater Mount Zion Church here in Austin, Texas, under the leadership of the wonderful Pastor Galen Clark, whom I've had the pleasure of knowing, for the better part of 8 years, long before I ever even moved here. My wife and I actually attended the Concord Church there in Dallas, Texas, under the leadership of Brian Carter. And that's where Pastor Clark grew up and was licensed and trained under E.K. Bailey. And of course,
Mm.
Brian Carter came up under E.K. Bailey as well. So Concord is home. But I've been in church my entire life. Starting in Tyler, went to the same church as the entire Campbell family. I literally was responsible for holding the door for Earl Campbell's mama every Sunday, as far back as I could remember.
There you go.
And when Mama Ann didn't see me on Sunday, she tell my dad, like, "Where that boy of yours at?" You know. So I grew up in church. Real funny Earl Campbell story. So my wife and I first started dating, and we had walked in, we had gotten there late, and we came and sat down, and everybody came and was walking up, and Earl Campbell was sitting right in front of us. Now, that's not uncommon for Earl to show up at church back home. It's not uncommon at all. We don't draw any attention to it, quite frankly, because he don't really roll like that.
Right.
He's Uncle Earl to everybody.
Right.
So he was sitting down, just hanging out, and everybody just was walking up, after you do your offering, everybody was coming up, shaking hands, saying, hey, how you doing? And my wife looks at him and goes, why is everybody coming up to him? I was like, babe, that's Earl Campbell. That's just what people do around here. And she leans in and goes, who's Earl Campbell? and he looked back like this and just busts out laughing like, oh, man. He's like, really, nephew? I'm like, I don't know, man. And having to break that news to my father after church that day, he was like, he said, "You sure about her?"
Yeah, you got look. That's one of them side eyes, like, boy,
man. Well, she did the same thing because at UTA she was in class with Billy Sims' daughter at UT Arlington, Bree. And so we were all out one day. We were all hanging out one night. And we were just talking about growing up in East Texas and, between Earl Campbell and Billy Sims. And Melissa was just like, y'all, who is Billy Sims? I was like.
Look, now some villages, that'll get you kicked out.
Yeah, it really would. I'm like, how you best friends with his daughter and you don't even know the man? I'm like, oh, God. So every time when we were driving back to Tennessee, we'd have to pass through Hooks. Where he from, we'd have to pass through that part of East Texas. Jeremiah Trotter's from out there too.
Yep. Joe Hubbard.
Yes, sir. Man, I never let a moment pass. I'm like, so you do know this? She's like, shut up. I know. It's where Billy said. So, but yeah, but in terms of, but church is important for that reason, right?
Right.
Because that's your first village in more ways than one. And so the work that I do, my ability to do public speaking and stand up in front of people all started at church. I grew up going to Vacation Bible School as a kid. Been getting put at the microphone since I was probably 2 or 3 years old, saying Easter speeches and everything. And that's why I learned to articulate. That's why I learned to speak and get over shaking the nerves of being in front of people. Right. And it was at church where all that started for me. And, as early as, 15 or 16, I was delivering the lessons and the high points for the day. My pastor, Ephraim A. Collins at Hopewell Valley Baptist Church there in Tyler, would always let me go to the microphone, and during Sunday school be like, hey, Brandon, you want to deliver the keynotes for the day? And he let me do that. And becoming a preacher wasn't surprising to anybody in the family except me. But everybody else was like, oh yeah, we know that. And so I don't come from a long line of preachers or anything like that. My great grandfather was a minister. My grandpa was a deacon. My dad was a deacon. And so the work that I do, I'm active. I'm over the education ministry. We have 8 causes that we subscribe to at our church and that we believe heavily in, that are biblically based, and mentoring underfathered young men is one of them. So I'm on the men's mentoring ministry leadership team, and I'm also the leader of the education cause, which is helping improve literacy rates, reducing dropout rates in Austin and the Central Texas area, and also equipping parents so that they can serve as resources to and for their children. And so I'm also currently co-ministering with the student ministry there at Greater Mount Zion. So that's the 6th through 12th graders. I'm helping to I'm serving on the preaching team for the 6th through 12th graders there as
awesome.
well. So very busy, very active in our church. Always have been. Everywhere I go, finding a church home is very important. It definitely has made the difference in my life. And you know and that's the lessons that I got from my grandfather and my dad was that to be a Jones means you subscribe to 3 things: faith in God, service to other people, and love of all people. Those are the three things it means to be a Jones. And that's what got passed down to my dad. That's what got passed down to me. And that's what I'm trying to pass down to my kids. So, you know, the church definitely keeps me busy because, you know, that's a village. And
no doubt.
the role that I play a bit of a different role there, you know. It's a soul influencing role.
Right. No, that's huge. And that definitely leads us into really our essential question, and then we're gonna speed through the rest. But I know that you've answered this in more than one way, but I want to give you a chance to just answer it directly.
Yeah,
it's our main question. How do you build great ancestors?
Man, listen. So
back.
Yeah. Let me tie it all in together because I know we got to get through this. Because
you take your time. Take your time. Take your time, preacher.
Yeah, man. How do I build a greater ancestor? Number one, recognize that it starts with me. I can't build anything or pour into somebody something that's not in me. And so I try my best to make sure that I stay filled up with the things that people need. So that when I'm pouring, it's coming from an authentic place. And so the way that I build a better ancestor is that I be the best version of myself that I can possibly be. So I stopped trying to be my dad. I stopped trying to be people that mentored me through the years and have helped me get to this point. And I started being the best version of me, meaning that there's going to be things that I accepted my limitations. You know, I accepted that I can't be a jack of all trades and then be a master of none. I got to stay in my lane and focus on what I'm great at and make an impact in the world through that. And so for me, building that better ancestors, being the best version of Brandon Jones. And with that, that means that I get to bring creativity and learning and faith to everything that I do. And by doing so, I feel like I'm going to leave the world in a better condition than the way I found it. I believe that every person I come in contact with is an opportunity to have a meaningful impact, whether it's a hi, a hello, a smile, or a no thank you in the way that I respond. I try to make sure that people feel important. The last part of that is, for me, more than anything else, outside of professing my faith and making sure that I live out what it actually says, not just talking about it, but actually being about it, is making sure that I'm botherable. And here's what that means. My pastor, Galen Clark, always says, I want to be a botherable pastor. And so I've taken that approach to the work that I do. And what botherable means is I don't want people to be hesitant to call me. I don't want people to be hesitant to reach out. It's like even when people say things like, man, I know you're busy. I was like, yeah, but we all are. So we here, let's talk, you know. With my kids, I don't ever want my kids to be hesitant to come down the stairs. Now, right now, I do want them hesitant to come down the stairs. But, you know, I don't ever want them going, can we go talk to daddy? Can we go in there? You know, my dad worked nights and would sleep during the day. And he never was mean about it. But when we go back there and wake him up, you know, look, that man is snoring the walls down back there. And I'm like, man, I sure do want this $20. Or, man, I sure do need to ask, can I have this snack that's in here? And I hated doing it, but my father was a botherable man. And no matter what time you called him, no matter what time you reached out, my dad would always he'd sit up. You could hear him sitting up in his chair, like, no, I'm good. What's up? What can I do? What can I help you with? And I want to be, I want to be like that. And I think that if I put myself out there as someone who can be botherable, that'll probably be a T-shirt I make one day.
Yeah, make you. Hey, 4X.
I got you. You know, I want to put that out there because being botherable means that, like, especially during times like this, just because you reach out doesn't mean that if I can't respond to you now, doesn't mean I'm not going to respond. And I think that we need to start being okay with being botherable, because I got text messages. I got a slew of text messages yesterday from people at the end of the workday. They were just like, man, I need to process this. I need to talk.
Right.
And I was like, I was there on Tuesday. I get it.
Right.
I've spent I'm married to a therapist. So, I'm like, look, I get it. And so I, cleared my calendar to try to make some time to listen to some folks, to, just kind of talk through this and process it. So being botherable and being your best authentic self and being you. Like, don't try to be anybody else. Don't try to be the best version of Will Goodlow, because there's only one Will Goodlow.
Right.
So don't try to be him. Be you. And when you can, and what that means is you got to learn who you are too. Though.
True.
You got to learn more about yourself. Learn where you come from. Learn about your actual ancestry. Because what you'll find when you do that is, we have a history of this in our family. I look at, I'm not trying to put my mom and sister's business out there, but with both of them and some of their mental health struggles, I'm like, that goes back a couple generations. Like, that didn't just start with one. When you really do the research and you listen to certain family stories, I'm like, man, this goes back. This is deeper. And I'm glad I'm able to observe it and see that. And we can't be ashamed of the depths from which we've risen or from where we're from. That's why I'm loud and proud about being from East Texas. I have zero shame about where I grew up, and I have zero shame about, growing up in the country and, bouncing around from house to house. That made me who I am. And that, it was because of that I'm able to I know the shoulders that I stand on, and I'm going to teach my kids that, and anybody I come in contact with. So that's the way that you build a better ancestor. Long-winded way of answering.
No, hey, look, you could keep going. I'd have been fine with it. We'd have raised the offering and everything. If you
man.
That'd have been good. I appreciate you saying that, because that's, the hard part, and I think you mentioned it earlier about Dr. Brene Brown with the just being vulnerable, the power of vulnerability, and just in vulnerability, obviously, lies authenticity.
Yes, sir.
You just gotta just be you. And I know something that I've told you before, and I've told the listeners before. I was absolutely abhorrent as a father, and I'm still building and growing. I started my fatherhood process a long time ago as a teenager, but
yes, sir.
I was listening to a song this morning before we connected, and I know you've heard it, old gospel song, but I'm still here.
Still here, man.
Had all those struggles, but so I say that because I always tell my son, Omri, my young son, I tell all of them, just be the best version of you.
Man.
It's just a simple question: is be the best who? And if I don't get that, whatever that child I'm talking to's name back, we got a problem.
Yes, I got to be the best Brandon. And it took me 30 plus years to do that.
Right.
I'm 36. Right. I'm 36 now. I can honestly say I was about 32, 31 to 32 before, that finally kicked in, because I spent the better part of, I graduated from college in 2006. I spent from 2006 to around 2016, 2017, trying to be the best version of everybody else. And it served me well in certain areas, but in other areas, it was horrible. It was a terrible experience. And so for me, that's why I got real comfortable just being me.
Right.
I'm learning that. And these last 4 or 5 years have been the best, because I've taken the time to really just focus on me and get better at being me, so that when I stand up and speak, I'm not trying to be like Dr. Moore. I'm not trying to be like Devin Walker. I'm not trying to be like Jonathan Sprinkles, another UT grad, phenomenal speaker. I'm not trying to be like those people anymore, because I understand me now. And because I understand me, and I know my limitations, and I know the areas that I need to improve in, I'm good. I can walk into the room confidently knowing, hey, the village concept ain't gonna be for everybody, but it's for somebody. Let's talk about it, And for the folks it's for, they gonna reach out, and the ones that don't, you know what? It still applies, but it's gonna apply differently at different times.
Absolutely. All right, this the speed portion now.
Let's do it.
Now look, we ain't on the track. Now I used to run track too, but we ain't on the track, so don't worry about it.
Man, come on.
Run fast, lean left. What are you reading?
Oh man, I'm finishing Kylan Moore's "A Dream Too Big."
Mm-hmm.
I'm a slow reader, and I've been reading the autobiography of Malcolm X for years, and I'm winding the corner on finishing that. I'm also finishing The Other Wes Moore. And I can't wait to finish the autobiography of Malcolm X so that I can jump into Dr. Pernille Joseph's The Sword and the Shield, the dual autobiography of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. I'm really looking forward to diving into that one, so I can't wait. But yeah, I'm an avid reader, believe in reading and literacy, so you'll always find me reading a book. I promise you that.
Yeah, I had to get my money right so I can get Dr. Joseph's book. Get my money right. All right, now this is top three list. Top three list. I started doing this with Coach Kyle Adams, and it's intentional because I know you 36. You grew up in the era. Here we go.
Yes,
Get
sir.
ready. Now I need your top three. Now I want you to brace yourself now. Now you could flip the genre if you want. I won't fuss. But I need your top three rap group or duo.
Top three rap group or duo?
Or duo. Pick one. You don't have to give me both.
Okay. Top three. Oh man. Woo. Top three.
Look, you waxed all the way through that.
Man, listen, Doc, that's a tough one for me. But since I gotta pick it, UGK.
Diamonds up against that wood.
Man, come on now, Texas, because Texas representing. Gotta go with Run DMC. The icons.
Mm-hmm.
Man, so many.
Yeah, that was
groups that I like.
I set you
You
up.
did. You set me up badly. And then Outkast. I thought Outkast.
Okay.
Those are my top three.
Okay. See, now one of these days I'm gonna get somebody. I'm gonna ask them who the greatest MC is.
Living.
Yeah.
Living?
See, there's always a preference, right? You got to do it. All right. Favorite food. Give me your top three menu items. If you had three meals that were gonna make you the absolute best Brandon Jones ever, what would those three meals be?
Oh man, so the number one meal of all time for Brandon Jones,
give me that plate.
Which my grandmother was the architect of this one for me. The salmon croquettes, rice and biscuits. That's the number one OG GOAT Brandon Jones. Like you wanna send me to the Lord right now. Make that meal for your boy. It's a wrap. Like that's number one all time. Everything else, man, I got some. I'm a foodie, so I need to watch these carbs. But man, after that meal, man, it just really ain't much else after that for me.
Everything else is food.
Yeah. Now again, I like a good shrimp fried rice.
Okay.
I like a good shrimp fried rice. And then, of course, being from East Texas, got to throw my barbecue in there.
Right.
Burn ends on the brisket, ribs, potato salad from somebody up there at the church that's over the age of 50. Nobody under 50 should be making potato salad because I don't trust you. You ain't lived long enough and struggled through anything to be making potato salad. So, yeah, you got to be 50 and over to make potato salad. So,
look, I need my potato salad prepared by hands with wrinkles.
Yes, pulled up in the old, the Dodge Shadow.
Yeah, exactly. Or a Cutlass, LT, a bro ham or something.
Come on, the Merlot bro ham.
Exactly. I need you to have. I'm not somebody gonna get mad, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I need you to have had a Jerry curl.
Come on now, listen. That means you've lived life. Come on.
I'm trying to tell you. I need to know that your leisure curl game was strong for you to put potato salad on my plate.
with the church fan with Martin Luther King on it.
Exactly. Yes. One day we need to talk about how the church fan had Martin Luther King and it was always sponsored in whole by a funeral home.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, man. Or in Tyler, speaking of Jerry curls, in Tyler, I know all the folks in East Texas gonna remember this one. Stan the Curl Man. He had a beauty shop, and he was sitting in the wicker basket chair with his leg crossed in a white suit with a Jerry curl. He was on All the Church Fans in Tyler. No lie. Stan the Curl Man was on the Fan. He was on the back of the programs at a few. Man, listen. Stan the Curl. Hey, listen. Everybody back home remember that one. You had MLK. You had the old Ella Fitzgerald looking fan.
Right.
Yeah, John F. Kennedy sometimes.
Right.
And Stan the Curl Man.
And
yes,
Stan
sir.
the Curl Man. All right, that's beautiful. Now, we know you like sports, so I ain't even going to ask you about that. Give me the top 3 movies.
My top 3 movies?
Top 3. Now, I know I got an idea. One of them going to have to be connected to a comic book. But go
well, not all of them, but because I love, like, we talking any genre.
To you.
If we talking any genre, the Brandon Jones list of favorite movies. Number 1 is 5 Heartbeats.
Oh, gotta have
that's
that.
That's the GOAT. The second one is House Party. That is the Brandon Jones classic.
Rest in
and
peace,
then, because my comic book movies they exist in their own kind of realm, man.
Okay.
But in any genre, the House Party, 5 Heartbeats, and then man, what's the third one? Listen, you making me choose these.
Choose wisely.
You know what? Into the Spider-Verse. I'll throw that one in there. That's a top 3 movie for me.
Okay.
Miles Morales got a biracial Spider-Man doing his thing. Oh, yeah. The animation was off the chain soundtrack. Old boy got in trouble for running his mouth yesterday on Twitter, but
yeah.
But hey.
Cutting up. Why not?
I like that'll be my top 3. But
top 3.
5 Heartbeats. I know that movie backwards and forwards. Oh my gosh.
What?
Robert Townsend, iconic, man.
What? You said my office hours are from
9 to 5.
Oh, look, we could talk about that all day. Look, there's so many cultural, relevant pieces that we need to throw in there. But anything with Robert Townsend is always going to challenge you.
Yes, it will. And it's gonna have a message. Right.
It's so beautiful. Well, Doc, we appreciate you, man. But before we let you go, since I know you got that Robert Townsend in your soul, but I want you to tell the folks how they can get in contact with you, sure. Not only with the social media, but talk to them about the B Speaks podcast, because I know it's coming.
Yeah, man. First, if you want to get in contact with me, it's pretty easy. I am at Dr. DRJONZ 84 on Twitter and Instagram, and also at B Jones Speaks, all one word, at B Jones Speaks on Twitter and Instagram as well, if you want to follow and keep up with what I'm doing through my public speaking. In terms of the podcast, so I've been thinking about this for a long time now. I do a podcast at work, and I really enjoyed it. I've done a couple podcasts this past year, and it's just fun. And I enjoy talking, obviously. And so I'm like, look, I can't take up airspace on everybody else's show. So I was like, man, I might as well do my own. Right, and so what I'm working on is a podcast that really focuses in on how to be, but we're talking about that best villager, how to be the best villager, and how to play and how to help others do the same. That's really what this is going to be all about. And so we're going to focus in on making the most of opportunities, how to choose mentors and how to be a mentor. And then we'll talk about this thing I'm calling maximizing. I mean, it's not the Strengths Quest version of it, but that making the most of the time, the space, the opportunity, the resources, and motivation, all those different things. It's going to be exciting. And so I'm hoping to push that out next month. And so I'm trying to, you may be on there one day. So
I might look if I get to that level, I'm retiring. I'm just letting y'all know that.
Nah, man, it's gonna be fun, and that's the goal for me, is to have fun, but also really fun with a message,
right.
Because we're living in a time right now where it's unprecedented
Mm-hmm.
what we're experiencing, and everybody is experiencing this differently. And so you see
Right.
people say, you know, if you don't come out of this with a business, or if you don't come out of this with your book written, well, that's not everybody's capacity. And
Right.
so I want to help people make the most of where they are. So if the
Mm-hmm.
best you can do is put one foot in front of the other every day, let's learn how to show appreciation for that. If the
Right.
best you can do is developing an LLC and coming out of this with a business, great. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that, and let's talk to people who are doing that. And that's really
Mm-hmm.
the goal of the podcast for me, is to be able to just sit down and talk with folks who are just being their best selves, and
Right.
understanding that, you know, and talking to them about, like, who are the people in the village that inspired you?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get this need met? Who's your therapist? Those different things.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
really, really, really looking forward to getting that out there. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and my wife told me the other day that, you know, she's gonna be the co-host, and I was like, I ain't gonna argue with you on it, but you know, you got to be here to record. You know, she's still essential personnel at the
Right. Right.
hospital, so I'm
Right.
like, you got to be around to record this thing now.
So look,
So
you were essential. I'm recording as soon as you hit the end of that driveway.
yeah, that'd be a quick way to not have a co-host, right there.
Exactly. Look, we'll carve out some spot on the couch for you if you need. But
There we go.
don't do it. Don't break up a happy home.
Ain't gonna do that. Ain't gonna do that, brother.
Don't do it. No, but man, I tell you what, Doc, we appreciate you. I know
Thank you.
you have a lot of things to do with your 86,400 seconds, just like the rest of the world, but you
Yeah, man.
chose to give several of those to us, and we are certainly honored. You know, and I need folks to understand. I said I stand on this man's shoulders because I do. He can be younger than me, and I can stand on his shoulders. Y'all don't get all sensitive. I ain't being
Right.
funny. I ain't cracking jokes. I'm just paying homage and respect to the work this man does and the
Thank
things
you.
that he's earned, and we appreciate you, sir.
I appreciate you, brother. I
So
appreciate you, man. Thank y'all.
yes, anytime.